Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the Staking Insider, where we provide actionable insights from staking industry thought leaders to analysts and investors. Today, we're thrilled to have Roneil Rumburg with us, co-founder and CEO at Audius. Roneil has been in crypto since 2011, first mining Bitcoin, then as an engineering partner at a VC fund until founding Audius in 2018. For those new to it, Audius is like a decentralized Spotify or SoundCloud that helps music artists cut out the notorious middleman of the traditional music industry. Audius' mission is to create a fully decentralized community of artists, developers, and listeners collaborating to share and defend the world's music. In this episode, we'll take a deeper look into Audius staking and its role in the ecosystem, some staking metrics, the reason behind its staking design, and the future developments shaping the project and music industry at large. Welcome, Roneil. It's great to have you on the show.
Marian, thanks for having me. And oh man, I wish I was in crypto from 2011. I think I was a little later than that, but yeah, I've been in crypto for I guess like 9-10 years or so. This has been a fun time, and seeing staking kind of grow to to be the kind of mechanism that it is today is also really cool. In the last 4 or 5 years, especially.
So you definitely qualify as an OG. That at least can be said. Cool. So can you, for our audience, expand a little bit more on what Audius is and what problem you solve?
Yeah. So at a super high level, Audius is a music community and discovery platform that puts the artist in control. It's a place where artists can share content, engage their fans in cool, different ways they haven't typically been able to elsewhere. And then they have agency over these fan relationships that they generate, so they can do anything that they want with those. Everything from using like alternative Audius clients to access the same relationships, or like exporting that data and using it to say, like decide who can buy tickets to a show of theirs in advance, or things like that. So where decentralization comes in for us is in enabling that control aspect. So by putting control of Audius itself in the hands of the very community and communities that are wanting to share content, engage with content, build fan bases, do these things. That kind of control aspect trickles down to the confidence that artists have that like the rules aren't going to change on them here the way that they often do on other platforms.
Hmm. So if you were to make a bullet list, what are the major benefits for artists distributing through Audius versus, let's say, Spotify? Maybe
Yeah,
what
it's
disadvantages?
Yeah. So the advantages, I should also kind of, clarify up front too. It's not an either or. So most of our artists distribute with both. They use the tools to do different things. So where Spotify is a great kind of mass market product that kind of provides a consistent listening experience to everyone who uses it, but has this kind of one size fits all pricing model. That's great for the very casual fan. The thing that's missing in the market right now, or that Audius is kind of starting to step into fulfilling the role of, is how best to engage those most highly invested fans, of people that come to your shows, that buy your merchandise, that do all of these things. So the benefits from the artist perspective in that are really, I guess what it boils down to is those super fans are effectively paying the same on Spotify as everyone else to access that content. As an artist, if you can offer some exclusive content, exclusive capabilities to engage with you through, things that people do on Audius, like remix competitions and things like that, there's an opportunity to charge fans that self-select into that category more than, your typical, like whatever fractional share of the Spotify subscription someone might get. So I think that value prop has definitely been resonating with our community. We see about 6.5, 7 million listeners on a monthly basis right now, and around 300,000 artists have come on and shared content. So it's working. It's been really exciting to see that. But I think there's still more work left for our community to do to really kind of finish fulfilling that vision I laid out, especially on the front of helping to monetize those fan relationships, which is a key area of focus for the next year or so.
Hmm. And a lot of attention Audius, of course, also gathered with the audio token, at least from the part of the market that comes from, yeah, from the crypto side, so to say. Why did you choose to go with the audio token? Why is it necessary? And where does the yield come from, let's say, in terms of staking?
Yeah. So the audio token is in the Audius context serves three functions. So it secures the network, meaning that the folks who are hosting content, hosting metadata through these discovery nodes and content nodes, which I think we'll get into further here in a few minutes. Um, and then also for various features that artists access, they actually lock a number of tokens to be able to access them on the product. So that security aspect, what it really means is if nodes on the network were to behave maliciously or misbehave, they get slashed. And that's kind of, similar to most other staking based networks. But then conversely, the rewards they're able to generate are proportional to the amount of value they have at stake and the amount of work that they do alongside of that. So how many nodes are being run and, all of that good stuff. Um, so securing the network, I mentioned, governing the network. So any and all changes to the code that powers Audius nodes, the Audius network, everything else have to go through on-chain governance. And then that feature access bit I mentioned on the artist front is the third pillar. So those three functions were we felt were most elegantly solved for with a token. So basically a token that confers, control of and ability to do work on this network. Like and what the token economic structures around it mean are that like I and the company I work for could go away tomorrow and all of this would keep working and functioning so long as the community of node operators, artists and fans that are using Audius continue to want to use it. So yeah, I mean I think there are always different means of solving the same issues, but we couldn't come up with any way that was, more kind of elegant and sensible than having kind of a unified economic structure to align the interests of these various counterparties to this ecosystem.
So looking at it from the validator side, there are two types of nodes that you can run, discovery nodes and content nodes, where if I understood correctly, discovery is for indexing the data, so it is findable for search, and then content nodes for providing the data that's being transferred then. And there are like minimum and maximum bonding amounts there. But you mentioned that misbehavior is being punished with slashing. How does this assessment work, whether somebody is behaving well or bad? Is this a community decision or how does this is this done?
That's a great question. So it is a community decision. It actually follows the same governance process that like network upgrades do. It's meant to be that option of last resort. The network is quite resilient to node downtime and even, nodes behaving maliciously. We've never, at least as far as I'm aware, there's never been a situation of a node actually behaving maliciously. There have been many situations downtime, as you can probably imagine, right? With a diffuse set of errors on that side and whatnot. Um, so staking or sorry, slashing is really the last resort for when, that there are some uptime thresholds and rules that the community has agreed to and voted into a place that if they're violated, a governance action is brought to slash that party. And then, there's the whole vote that follows. So there's a bunch of kind of economic safety measures in place that enable the slashing mechanism here is higher latency, right? Than like a lot of works, obviously, if there's
Mm.
sort of, community decision making that's happening around that. The unbonding period in Audius is 7 days because of that. And then there are some other constraints on, like how funds can move around within the network. So when someone goes to unbond, they actually are, those funds are placed in kind of an interstitial escrow state where they're not earning rewards, but they're not yet withdrawable either. And then at the expiration of that cooldown period, someone can withdraw. So I think we found that structure to work well for us. Your description of the node types is quite spot on accurate. So think of one, the content node side is like this kind of CDN sort of structure that's Audius specific. And the discovery node side is almost like a version of the graph or something like that that's kind of Audius specific. And there are needs on both fronts that aren't perfectly well solved by third-party networks. But, in a more distant future, I would love to see, more robust kind of like cross-chain indexing and CDN kind of tools be available that, a network like Audius that's, serving a specific user use case should not need to solve this full stack of needs, right? In today's market, and certainly in the market that Audius was built in 2018 onward, like there just wasn't really a choice to get to a live functioning, fully decentralized product, I think, without these responsibilities being owned by the network.
So, and also from the minimum or the minimum stake that's necessary to run nodes, you can see that it's more geared towards professional validators. It's not that everyone can run a node there. What are technical requirements, if you can recall them right now, for any professional validators that want to get in? Because our audience, we do have quite a lot of staking professionals also tuning in.
Very cool. Yeah, here I'll actually, I don't know them quite off the top of my head, but I can certainly pull them up. They're on the Audius wiki, which is on GitHub here. So it's just hub.com/Audius project. And then if you go to the Audius protocol repo and click wiki, you can pull them up and click through to the staking resources. So I'm not going to read off all of these because they're probably reductive, but the big top line requirements here are a data center quality internet connection. Like neither one of these node types can really be run on like a residential or home internet connection. The amount of upstream and downstream bandwidth, well, it's really upstream bandwidth, I guess that's required, right? It is substantial, and like the latency issues and stuff that come with like home hosting also cause problems when we've seen people attempt to do that on the network in the past. There's that minimum bond that you talked about. So it's 200,000 audio tokens per node, but each node can also accept up to a maximum amount of delegation that's quite a lot higher. So as a node operator, you can set this kind of delegation take rate or revenue share that any rewards earned by people who are delegating to you, you earn that percentage from. And then you need a publicly available DNS endpoint for that node that is, has a valid SSL cert on it. So that just means that, from a like user's browser content, their browser is actually able to go talk directly to your node without having to do any funny business or anything. The technical requirements for a node are pretty simple beyond that, right? Like think like your typical, AWS like large or X large instance. Those ones are like, $300-$400 a month or whatever should be more than adequate for the needs. But yeah, if anyone's curious to get into more of the weeds of like what specific, recommended loadouts exist for running a node, like definitely check out the wiki on the Audius GitHub.
Mm-hmm. And running an Audius node right now, as per the data on staking rewards, gives you 23.3% rewards per year for running the node like as a professional. And for like retail stakers that just want to delegate, this option right now gives you about 22% of rewards per year. And 7% of those are coming from just token issuance. The rest is, that would be my question, where does this yield come from? And do you plan to monetize Audius at a later stage?
Yeah, great question. So it's a bit confusing because there is a network-wide 7% annual issuance, but when you divide that into the amount that's currently staked, that gets you to that roughly 20%. So the majority of rewards that people are generating right now are actually from that net new issuance. The remainder and the side that, as I mentioned, over the coming years, I would imagine grows to be a more substantial and ultimately to kind of supplant and replace new issuance is this revenue earning alongside of the payments that pass through the Audius network. So if a payment is made to unlock content, um, there's a structure in the network that a percentage of that payment actually flows back to stakers, right? So I know it gets a bit complicated, and actually the community is kind of thrashing through different variations and takes on like how specifically this should be implemented. So like definitely go pop in our Discord and whatnot if you have any thoughts here. But that kind of payment flow happening on Audius right now, percentage is I think intended. The community plans to have redirected to stakers in a future network upgrade. So yeah, pretty excited to see that kind of come to fruition. But like very thinking very long term. I think that, the proposals around Audius's long-term sustainability have always kind of modeled or factored in that 10% take rate off of the payment flow that happens in the network. So, and I should clarify when you ask as well, like do you all intend to monetize? So the network and the community of folks building here, like certainly do intend, as far as I can tell, at least to roll out that kind of revenue capture structure. But our company is not party to that. So our company is actually really, serving at the pleasure and the direction of the community. So, if folks were to vote to defund us or whatever, if they think we're not doing useful work for the ecosystem and direct that to, there are a lot of other parties that have, have and continue to do grant work for the network. They're happy, they're perfectly capable of doing that if they don't think I and we are doing a good job. So yeah, it's an interesting thing in that like the network, we in our eyes monetizes over time, but I don't think that the companies that build around the network monetize directly from what's happening on the network. I think we're starting to see third parties integrate Audius that monetize through alternative channels. Everything from like artist tools that are charging artists on a monthly basis, but then like using Audius to do various things or to pull analytics that artists can aggregate across all the various tools that they use, things of that nature. So
What are potential bottlenecks that you are facing later down the road that you foresee now or that you're already facing right now?
what a great question. So there are lots of bottlenecks, I think both technically and kind of, more, I don't know what the word is, I guess like, community scale wise, right? But on the technical front, those are more straightforward to identify, right? So the way a network like Audius is built, usage, I would posit is roughly a function of, three things. It's like content on the network, artists on the network, and fans on the network, right? Usage is what drives payment volume, but to support usage requires more nodes, more resources on the network, right? So unlike a lot of, layer ones or things like that, there's not like a fixed capacity on the Audius network, right? In a perfect world where Audius is growing and growing quickly, the needs of the network to consume infrastructure, grow in step with that, right? So I wouldn't say that's like a bottleneck so much as just a constraint of, a like content network like this, right? In that the growth engine is content, which means that growth engine requires more resources over time. So the the token economic design of Audius is meant to kind of take that into account and to for infrastructure reward pools to continue to kind of scale in step with the usage that ends up indirectly being reflected by that 10% rate. So yeah, that's the other bottleneck. I think the network's a long ways off of this, but I know folks in the community have already been talking a lot about this because it's a fairly obvious one. Every discovery node on the network is a full index of all the data that's available on Audius. At some point, they don't store all the content, right? They're just storing like this metadata that people can search against to ask a question like, how many tracks does XYZ artist have, right? That's what the discovery node answers. At some point, the amount of content on audio, hopefully, right, will be so large that like the metadata can't all fit in one place. And, the discovery nodes, so long as the index itself is sufficiently small, scale horizontally very well, right? Like users can load balance across all the discovery nodes that exist on the network, but there's a limitation or a ceiling on how much like a single node can vertically scale, right? And I think like I said, we're many years away from that ceiling, but it's like there is a hard ceiling somewhere there, right? That will be interesting to figure out for the community to figure out how to grow past.
What would be some major milestones that would lead Audius to become a mainstream digital distributor?
Oh, also a great question. I think we're really excited, to continue like putting one foot in front of the other and grow and grow quickly. I don't think there's like any I can't really name any specific moment or like inflection point where I would see us, being seen as like mainstream as such. I think that's something that just kind of happens slowly and you sort of pick up your head one day and say, oh, like, this thing is sort of, like a thing, right? And yeah, I think the milestones that we care about though are, like I mentioned, that payment volume front, seeing payment volume get up into the millions and tens of millions of dollars sort of range. I think will be a huge step in the direction towards putting money in our artists' pockets that are using Audius. Similarly, like starting to I think Audius has reached a stage where large very artists with very very large followings are engaging and sharing things. Seeing more of that, right? I think it would be there's definitely like my like wish list I keep in my head of artists that I would love to see. I'm sure a lot of others have their own wish lists too, but ultimately we think the Audius model complements really well existing revenue streams that artists big, small, and everywhere in between have, right? These tools are useful and usable by artists of all shapes and sizes. So I think seeing us continue to grow upwards into that kind of head of the artist distribution, if you will, in terms of fans and following. Yeah, very excited for that as well.
Hmm. What I personally always like to think about is second and third order effects because you can be very creative with that. And assuming that Audius becomes widely successful, what would you anticipate or what would you think could be second and third order effects of this on the music industry, how artists create their art and yeah. Have you thought about this already?
Yeah, we most certainly have. So, like taking a few steps back, like the kind of 10-year vision for the future here is one where artists are vertically integrated as a business, right? Like they control their own distribution, they control the ability to speak to their fans, they ultimately like really control their own destiny. And I think that's happening with or without Audius. There's momentum in that direction from all sides of the market and from all aspects of how artists interact with their fans and how they, everything from how they raise capital to how they distribute, right? Which is where we focus. But I think we obviously like having that view of the future, we have a strong opinion of where we see Audius fitting into that. And we really, I think we want Audius to be the kind of like convening point or nexus point that every artist is incentivized to aggregate their biggest super fans, right? I think there are other places that are well suited to and well served the use case of the casual sit back listener that just wants to listen to a hit or two like a couple times a month. That's not the listener that we're targeting. Audius really wants to be the place where those super fans aggregate, find community, engage with one another, and ultimately, are financially engaging with their artists along the way to a degree that artists are able to earn, more revenue here, right? So another little anecdotal we'll share on this front, like a lot of people like to blame Spotify and the other major DSPs they're called, or like digital streaming services, for the fact that artists aren't making enough money generally, right? And I think it's just a very it's both inaccurate and very reductive of a more complex situation. So Spotify's take rate is about 30%. If Spotify took zero, right, a stream would still be worth less than a cent. That's just the business model of streaming. There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's an amoral instrument. It just is what it is, right? And people try to point blame at specific parties or individuals for things coming to be that way. Whereas, like, the Audius and broadly, like, the Web3 music approach to this problem is to say, the goal here should not be to better divvy up the existing pie. It should be to grow the pie substantially by creating more revenue opportunities that are, at different price points, at higher price points, whatever it is. The higher order philosophy being there should be a free market for pricing. Whereas the existing streaming model is a very fixed, like, one size fits all, like, either, so anyway, this is a very rambly answer, but to the second and third order effects, we're starting to see TikTok, Spotify, and others actually influence how artists make music. Artists are making shorter songs. They're making songs that have memeable hooks and things that, like, do well on TikTok. I mean, there are even stories of, I don't want to name names because, like, I don't know, what I am and aren't supposed to share of what I heard secondhand, but there are artists who designed tracks and, like, dances to go with them with the intent of having them, like, go viral on TikTok, right? Having a dance that's accessible to a broad audience, hard to do, that's instantly recognizable, and that fits in, that 25 or 30-second, like, bite-sized chunk. And, I guess the biggest effect I would love to see is for artists to be able to, make whatever the hell they want and have that their fans like to listen to, not have to kind of serve the algorithm or serve these very restrictive kind of more marketplaces that exist today. There should be a free market for content, and that will ultimately bring forth, I think, better content and better monetization opportunities for the people who use them.
So it's less of a really hardcore or die-hard competitive situation, but more that Audius is opening up the opportunity space for artists, but also for fans and the music industry at large. And
You
then
got it.
it's much more symbiotic, actually.
Yeah, you got it. That's absolutely it. I mean, I think, yeah, it's music as an entire industry right now is only $42 billion a year. $42 billion sounds like a lot, right? But that's, I think, less than a quarter the size of gaming, for example. And gaming is growing at a very fast pace. Music is roughly, stagnant-ish at that level. So it's, I don't think the problem is how we're divvying this pie. I think the problem is that the pie is not big enough and not reflective of the impact that music has for all of us.
Perfect. All right, closing it off here. What is the best way to follow you and Audius?
Yeah, so I'm not super active, so don't follow me. Go follow Audius. Its project is the Twitter handle, Audius Music, on Instagram as well. Pop by those channels if you want to, ask questions, get involved. Come to the Audius Discord. That's the best place to hang out and dive into all these things that we kind of talked through today.
Thank you, Roneil, for being so generous with your time. We have been speaking with Roneil Rumburg, the co-founder and CEO of Audius. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more episodes from the forefront of staking. Follow me on Twitter at Marian_Walter_ and our team at Staking Rewards. You've been listening to the Staking Insider. For Roneil and the audience, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.